Trump was just indicted and arraigned in the records case. Do you believe he's a target potentially in the January 6th case?
Yes, and I've said from the beginning, by the way, I've defended him when I think there's cases that are unfair, like the one up in New York and so forth. And I've always said I think the January 6th case will be a hard case to make because of First Amendment interest, but I'm actually starting to think they will pull the trigger on that, and I would expect it to be this summer.
How strong is the special counsel's case on obstruction specifically?
Well, it's very strong because a lot of the evidence comes from his own lawyers. And furthermore, there's evidence of him saying things that are completely incompatible with any idea that this was an innocent document dispute.
Do you believe he lied to the Justice Department?
Do I personally believe it? Yes, I do.
And do you believe that he continues to claim that he has all these privileges and rights under the Presidential Records Act? Is he mischaracterizing the act?
Absolutely. The legal theory by which he gets to take battle plans and sensitive national security information as his personal papers is absurd. It's just as wacky as the legal doctrine they came up with for, having the vice president unilaterally determine who won the election. The whole purpose of the statute, the Presidential Records Act, was to stop presidents from taking official documents out of the White House. It was passed after Watergate. That's the whole purpose of it. And therefore, it restricted what a president can take. It says it's purely private, that had nothing to do with the deliberations of government policy. Obviously, these documents are not purely private. It's obvious. And they're not even now arguing that it's purely private. What they're saying is the president just has sweeping discretion to say they are, even though they squarely don't fall within the definition. It's an absurd argument.
This is Trump's former Attorney General Bill Barr dropping some pretty brutal news on Trump that, in his opinion, Trump's likely to be indicted in yet another federal case by the DOJ, this time for the insurrection on January 6th. And here's why I think this holds more weight than just any dude pontificating about Trump's legal troubles. Bill Barr says in that same sentence that he's defended Trump against what he believes are unfair prosecutions like the one in New York, a reference to the Manhattan DA case. But here's the thing, that indictment was completely justified. Trump falsified business records with the intent to defraud. He claimed that he was paying Michael Cohen for legal services in 2017, which was a lie. And that lie was told in order to cover up yet another crime, which was using $130,000 to protect his candidacy by paying off Stormy Daniels in exchange for her silence. But that amount is beyond the federal campaign contribution cap, and he knew it was beyond that cap, which is why he claimed that the payment was for non-existent legal services for Michael Cohen. It was a crime when Michael Cohen went to prison for it, and it's still a crime for the person who directed Michael Cohen's actions, which is Donald Trump. Does this pale in comparison to the federal crimes that Trump has committed? Sure. But is all of it still a crime? Absolutely. All of which is to say that if Bill Barr thinks that that very legitimate prosecution is somehow illegitimate, then his bullishness on the January 6th prosecution is all the more potent. This is a guy who will clearly give Trump the benefit of the doubt even when he doesn't deserve it. So the fact that he does think that Trump will be prosecuted by the DOJ for January 6th really does speak volumes. And of course, Trump's impending prosecution for January 6th is only one of the cases that he's contending with right now. Bill Barr then went on to speak about the ongoing prosecution for the classified documents case, and in terms of why that case is so strong, he brings up a valid point, that the evidence comes from Trump's own lawyers and even Trump himself. Remember, Trump's attorney, Evan Corcoran, noted that Trump knowingly misled him about the location of the documents that were requested by law enforcement, which is now being used by Jack Smith. And the only reason that Jack Smith has those notes in that testimony to begin with is because a federal judge ruled that attorney-client privilege did not apply to their interactions because of the crime-fraud exception. And that's a provision that allows prosecutors to work around attorney-client privilege if it becomes clear that a crime was being committed. So right there, we already have evidence of a crime thanks to Trump's own lawyer. And beyond that, there's an audio recording of Trump himself saying, quote, in July 2021 at Trump National Golf Club in Bedminster, New Jersey, during an audio recorded meeting with a writer, a publisher, and 2 members of his staff, none of whom possessed a security clearance, Trump showed and described a plan of attack that Trump said was prepared for him by the Department of Defense and a senior military official. Trump told the individuals that the plan was, quote, highly confidential and, quote, secret. Trump also said, as president, I could have declassified it, and now I can't, but this is still a secret. So if there was any doubt about Trump's awareness that what he was doing was a crime, all you have to do is listen to Trump himself making it clear that he does. And finally, one last point. Trump and his attorneys, including most recently Alina Habba, have been coming out on air and suggesting that Trump was allowed to take those documents with him to Mar-a-Lago because of the Presidential Records Act. But what the Presidential Records Act established is that presidential records belong to the U.S. government, not the president personally, and must be preserved. Meaning it is the polar opposite of what Trump's claiming it to be. I mean, just use common sense here. Why would a law passed after Watergate, in response to Nixon seeking to destroy records relating to his presidential tenure upon his resignation, give presidents more latitude to steal documents? It makes no sense on its face. But what Trump is trying to do is just throw out legal jargon in hopes that it'll just sound more official, that it'll sound like he knows what he's talking about. It's like if a cop came up to you and said that you're in violation of statute 1742 subsection 10.2. Makes it sound legit, right? Trump thinks that if he just barks Presidential Records Act, that he'll make a case for his innocence, when in reality, he is quite literally invoking the law that he broke. It's like if a murderer came out and said, "I can't be guilty, just look up the definition of homicide." I would say that he's screwing himself here, but that bus has more than left the station. And finally, Bill Barr ends with this.
You say Trump's alleged conduct is indefensible. So many Republicans continue to defend him. What will it say if the party, your longtime party, puts him forward as their nominee?
Well, that's the problem. I don't think they're actually defending his conduct, but they are saying it's unfair to prosecute him. But that then raises another question. Okay, if it's unfair to prosecute him, that's not the whole answer. The question is, should we be putting someone like this forward as the leader of the country, leader of the free world, who's engaged in this kind of conduct? The other thing is, this is not just an isolated example. Trump has many good qualities, and he accomplished some good things. But the fact of the matter is, he is a consummate narcissist, and he constantly engages in reckless conduct that puts his political followers at risk and the conservative and Republican agenda at risk.
Would he put the country at risk if he was in the White House again?
He will always put his own interests and gratifying his own ego ahead of everything else, including the country's interests. There's no question about it. This is a perfect example of that. He's like, he's like a defiant 9-year-old kid who's always pushing the glass toward the edge of the table, defying his parents to stop him from doing it. It's a means of self-assertion and exerting his dominance over other people. And he's a very petty individual who will always put his interests ahead of the country's, his personal gratification of his, of his ego. But our country can't be a therapy session for, a troubled man like this.
Now, you might have caught a quick glimpse of this in this last statement, but the reason that Bill Barr is coming out against Trump here isn't because Bill Barr is suddenly displaying integrity. It's because Trump puts the Republican agenda at risk. Bill Barr isn't abandoning Trump now because it's the right thing to do. He's abandoning Trump because he doesn't think that Trump is useful to the GOP and its agenda. So before you anoint Bill Barr some man of principle, just recognize why he's doing this. It's because he wants to help the party that is banning abortions, banning books, banning LGBT rights, slashing earned benefits, defending gun manufacturers, and pretending that climate change doesn't exist. And he knows that Trump, with all of his legal issues, is an impediment to that agenda. All of which is to say, no, Bill Barr is not the hero of this story. That he's able to point out Trump's criminality means he's capable of acknowledging objective reality, which, yes, is still a rarity in the Republican Party, but let's not conflate that with heroism. Before you go, I need some help. Please subscribe to this channel and do your part to help grow the progressive media ecosystem. I don't do sponsorships or paid ads, I won't ask for money, but just subscribing to this channel goes a really long way, and it helps get the message out to more people. The subscribe button is right here on this screen. You can also subscribe to my Spanish language channel, which I made to reach those crucial Spanish-speaking voters. That link is on the screen too. And finally, if you want to listen to my audio podcast, you can follow that link as well. Thanks so much for watching.